The first beam came like a sunrise with bad intentions, thin as a needle, bright as a god's accusation. Commander Luma Kesh didn't have time to order evasive maneuvers. The hegemony's Gravelance had already crossed half a light second, aimed to stitch the refugee barges to the starfield. "Brace for thermal bloom," her ops chief barked. The VRC *** Halcyon *** rolled, throwing up shields and decoy mirrors. It wouldn't matter. Nothing they owned could bully physics that hard. And then the beam stopped, not shut off. It froze, hung there in the dark like a glass rod of daylight, humming inside everyone's teeth. Telemetry said it was still trying to be light. Reality disagreed. "Who?" Luma whispered, throat dry in the ship's thin air. "New contact," Ops said. "Tiny, no drive signature, 0 approach time." The contact slid into formation like a curious bird and, with offensive disregard for engineering, drifted straight through *** Halcyon *** shields without popping a single alarm. The hull cameras caught a skiff the size of a shuttle with a hull the color of spilled milk. A glyph crawled along its side in letters their translators called *** human ***. A voice lit the bridge speakers, pleasant, mildly amused, inexplicably local. "Good afternoon, neighbors. Dr. Mira Ochoa, Quiet Armada. Would you like help with the whole murder ray situation? I brought coffee." Someone laughed too loud, too scared. Luma found her voice. "Identify your authority and your mechanism, Doctor." "Authority." The voice smiled. "Custodian sworn by the old promises. Mechanism, courtesy mostly. Also a fold mirror and a polite request to the vacuum to keep still. You've got 6,000 civilians behind you and 2 hegemony cruisers in front. Choose where you want me." "Everywhere," said Luma before she remembered she was supposed to sound like a commander. "On the barges, protect the children." "Copy that, pouring a perimeter." Space changed. It wasn't dramatic, just wrong. The kind of wrong sailors told as jokes to scare new crew. *** Halcyon *** scopes showed 32 bright seeds blinking into being around the convoy, positions updating faster than sensor tick. Each seed laid down a ribbon of pale force like silk in a tide. And the convoy suddenly rode in the eye of a calm that should not exist inside a gravity shear. The hegemony cruisers realized belatedly that they'd fired first and lost second. They lit drives, slewing to bring launchers to bear on the white skiff. Dr. Ochoa's voice didn't change. "Advisory, any munition crossing my ribbons will be returned to sender needed and served warm. Also, you should really audit your targeting doctrine. Whoever sold you the lance didn't tell you about its resonance tantrums." "Is this an attack?" Luma demanded. "It's an intervention. A beat. Midway taught us timing matters. Dunkirk taught us who matters. Do you have wounded?" The reference meant nothing to most of her crew, but something in the cadence, the way the words arrived wearing old weight, made Luma answer honestly. "We do. Vector your worst to your aft bay. I'm going to put a clinic in your cargo hold. Consent implied by survival impulse, but you can revoke it after everyone's breathing. Quiet Armada does not harvest data without permission." "Armada?" Her tactical officer mouthed, silent. On the forward screen, the frozen lance still glowed like a museum piece salvaged from a bad future. Luma wanted to ask 1,000 questions. How do you freeze light? How do you walk through shields? How do you sound so tired? Her comms board chimed. New channel, clean, piercing, elegant. A second human voice, older than age. "Children of the Meridian Compact and the Sable Hegemony, this corridor is now under promise. You will not fire doomsday devices here. You will not test reality's patience. You will stand down and breathe." The hegemony captain snarled across open space, all teeth and doctrine. "By whose sovereignty?" For a moment, the stars themselves seemed to lean in. "By the sovereignty of those who buried the last 17 empires that tried to own the sky." Silence. The kind that makes you hear your pulse. Dr. Ochoa came back on the private channel, voice softened. "Commander Kesh, bring me your chief physician. Also, if you can manage it, hot water. The coffee isn't negotiable." Luma should have demanded protocols. Instead, she sent for her medic and a samovar. When the human stepped through **Halcyon **S bulkhead door without opening it, wearing soft clothes and a tool belt that looked insultingly light for what she'd done to a beam of light, Luma finally saw it. The weary kindness behind the eyes, the way someone stands when they've carried a load too long to speak of. Dr. HFY knelt by the first evac on a stretcher and began to work. The tools hummed like lullabies. "Explain your objective," Luma said, not unkind. "Test," HFY said, "not of weapons, of wisdom." On the main display at the very edge of the charted map, old stars woke like city lights at dusk. Lines connected them in a lattice that wasn't a net so much as a promise. The hegemony cruisers stopped maneuvering. Word was traveling. Luma felt history pivot under her boots. The grave lance hummed, yearning to be light again. Around it, coffee steamed in paper cups that shouldn't exist in vacuum, and a woman from nowhere tightened a tourniquet with the confidence of someone who had done this on beaches with bad names and in cities after worse nights. "Doctor," Luma said softly, "what happens if we fail your test?" HFY met her eyes, dark, steady. "Then we do what gardeners do when a tree goes feral. We cut, we graft, we try again, but we prefer harvests to pruning." The beam hummed like a caged storm. Far away, the lattice brightened. On **Halcyon **S bridge, no one breathed. And in that trembling quiet, the galaxy remembered how to be afraid. They met in a cargo bay that smelled of iodine and boiled beans. Dr. HFY set a tin mug on a crate and drew a diagram in light above it. A web of stations threaded through the dark like fireflies arranged by an obsessive cartographer. "We call them promise arrays," she said. "We built the first when your ancestors were still arguing about the ethics of sale taxes. The arrays do three things: listen, heal, and interpose. You've met interposition." Luma's medic, a careful amphibian named Waru, adjusted a saline line and tried to sound like this was any other consult. And the freezing of photonic flux. A fold mirror with manners. Think of asking a river to linger in a bowl. HFY's mouth twitched. "We learned to ask nicely." Waru blinked the slow blink that meant new religion. Luma kept to questions with teeth. "Why help us at all?" "Civic duty," HFY said. "Coalitions worth having aren't born, they're built. Found family scales up." She sipped. "Also, we are tired of being alone at the grown-ups' table." The hegemony cruisers hung a beam, blood-red icons on the tack plot. They hadn't fired again. Luma suspected not firing was the most courageous thing their captain had done. The briefing stretched into a small history lecture. HFY spoke not like a conqueror recounting trophies, but like a teacher laying ground for consent. She told them about Midway, a battle on an old blue planet where timing and inference beat tonnage. She told them about Dunkirk, civilians turning boats into a bridge because no other bridge would do. She told them about code talkers from a desert nation, speaking a language an enemy empire never bothered to study, and how sometimes the ethical thing is also the clever one. "I'm missing the part where you admit you've pruned people," Luma said. HFY didn't look away. 17 times the young reached for weapons that would break more than bones. Each time we chose proportionality and non-combatant protection. Just war is still war, it costs, we hate the bill. "You sound like Stoics," Waru murmured. "Duty without despair." "Hope with calluses," HFY said. A chime cut the mood into sharp pieces. Ops piped the alert into the bay. "Commander, flash from Crown, the neutral moon. Food depots overwhelmed. Refugee shelters at capacity. Hegemony loyalists marching on the transit yards. They're asking anyone for help." Crown was 2 jumps out, across a corridor the hegemony considered a private hallway. Luma's escorts were battered. Her convoy could shelter in place, wrapped in human ribbons, and survive the day. Or she could break cover and run a rescue in plain view of 2 enemy cruisers and whatever else lay in that corridor. "You want me to tell you what the test is?" HFY said. "It's always the same. Who do you define as us today?" Luma felt the weight of every logistics briefing she'd ever sat through, the math of risk and ration. Also the math of later. What would Crown remember about the Meridian Compact if they hid in a miracle while a moon begged? "Plot the run," she said. "We go." Understood, Ochoa said, and she didn't look surprised. We'll peel ribbons for you. Won't that expose your array? We've been exposed since the day your children started drawing us in their sky books. Ochoa's smile went wry. Besides, we don't pass every test by staying hidden. They launched with a convoy that looked like a string of tin cans and prayers. The hegemony cruisers slid aside, not quite giving way, not quite blocking, playing at neutrality to see which way history turned. Ochoa's seeds leapt ahead, painting the corridor with those pale silks that told torpedoes to behave and space to sit still. Halfway to Crown, a flurry of civilian transponders bloomed from the dark. Narrow boats, miners' cutters, orchard barges, everybody with a drive and a conscience. Luma's throat tightened. Dunkirk without boats was just a story. Dunkirk with boats could be a corridor. She opened General Channel. All craft, this is Commander Kesh of the **Halcyon**. If you came to help, fall in by threes. If you came to fight, you're in the wrong chapter. They came anyway, and it was beautiful, scruffy, crooked, all wrong by doctrine and all right by heart. Woru murmured triage assignments like a priest. Ochoa's skiff skipped along the line, mending, retuning, kissing drive bells awake. Crown rose, a pearl dusted with city light and smoke. Riot icons flickered like a fever. The array's voice, not Ochoa's, the other one, the one that sounded like January and lullabies, rolled across every channel. Children of Crown, put down your stones, pick up your neighbors. The riot shivered and sagged as if someone had opened a window and let out the heat. It didn't vanish. Nothing that ugly leaves on the first ask, but the marching stopped. Lines blurred, the transit yards opened their gates. Commander, Ops whispered, we're seeing reality stress in two sectors, hegemony pre-charging entropy torpedoes, and our own side, the compact's black labs, are spooling a causality shiv. So this was the other part of the test. Could they save a moon while their seniors lit matches near the curtains? Ochoa stood, mug empty. We'll take the torps. Can you talk to your admirals? Admirals don't take calls from captains halfway through heroics, Luma said, but they sometimes take calls from history. She switched to record. This is Commander Luma Kesh. We're lifting Crown's children now. If you fire that shiv, you fire through them and me. Consider proportionality. Consider the after. Midway was won by patience in the fog and a bad idea not taken twice. She sent it naked, without clearance, into the compact's command net. A career fit neatly into a trash chute somewhere off-screen. Luma didn't care. Ships burned. Kids cried. You picked us and you lived with it. At the edge of the map, the lattice brightened until even Crown's streetlights seemed to notice. In her ear, the array's old voice sighed like surf. We are watching. And then the entropy torpedoes arrived. A school of pitch-black fish that ate meaning. The array's ribbons reknitted and the torp stopped a hand's breadth from the convoy, writhing like nightmares snagged on a song. Ochoa glanced at Luma. Hold steady. How long? Luma asked. As long as it takes, Ochoa said, and for the first time her hands trembled. The message hit every screen from palace to diner booth. It wasn't a threat. Threats strutted. This just arrived and took off its coat like it lived here. A starfield appeared, then an old woman's face, not wrinkled so much as weathered by centuries of doing the next right thing. This is the chorus of the quiet, she said. We are humanity. For a long time we have stood behind the curtain, catching knives you didn't know you threw. We prefer poems to orders, gardens to prisons, and partnership to parenting. Today we ask you to join us or make us work. Images followed, ruined worlds stitched back together like quilts, machine minds playing in sandboxes big as suns, children of species history called extinct flying kites in a ring habitat where the wind smelled of oranges. Then the three futures, a map of sectors ripped by weapons that liked breaking rules, a gentler map with many locks and fewer keys, and a third, lit by shared beacons where fleets wore paint instead of blood. We're not judges, the chorus said, but we are stewards. We won't let you burn the theater to improve the play. On **Halcyon****S bridge, the crew watched in the gray light of exhausted adrenaline. Woru snored softly in a corner between triage waves. Ochoa leaned against a crate, eyes closed, as if listening for an answer no one else could hear. The hegemony did not clap. A hardline admiral sent a *** Thorn Cascade ***. A swarm of submunitions designed to force hospitals to close, prayers to choke, logistics to fail. The cascade flowed toward Crown's transit yards and the convoy loading bays like a toxic snowfall. Doctrine says to scatter. Luma's tactical officer didn't look at her. Doctrine says the swarm learns your pattern if you try to shield. Doctrine never drank coffee with a miracle, Luma said. We're not scattering, we're building a wall. With what? Barges and narrowboats and orchard ships. Dunkirk again, but this time with planning. All civilian craft, she said on open channel, form the ** braid ***. 3 lines offset nose to tail. Halcyon will anchor. Crown yard, launch your loaders empty and hold position. You're scaffolding now. Dr. Ochoa. The human was already moving. Dropping mass lenses. Think of them as bagels for gravity. Thorn swarm will flow into the holes. She grinned, quick and feral. Also, we are going to sing at them. Sing? Navajo code talkers once used a language the enemy didn't respect enough to learn. The swarm learns patterns. We're going to give it culture. Choirs crackled online, ship crews, street crowds, kids with sticky fingers clutching the same ration biscuits on 10 worlds. Ochoa fed the mics a lattice of timing, polyrhythms that would keep the swarm trying to agree with too many clocks at once. Not magic, just math with a backbeat and a refusal to treat civilians as scenery. The cascade hit the braid. For 5 minutes that felt like a war and a lifetime, Crown watched a wall made of people being people. The lenses bent trajectories. The songs confused heuristics. The array's ribbons did the work that hands and hope could not. When the last thorn fizzled out against a loader's borrowed shield, the yards erupted in a cheer that sounded like rain on a tin roof. Luma let out a breath she didn't know she'd staged. Her console flashed a red she'd never seen. *** causality, Shiv, armed ***. Not hegemony, compact. Someone on her own side had decided tests were for other people. Doctor, she whispered. Ochoa didn't answer. Her eyes were on a plot beyond the plot where the promise arrays were taking positions they only took when history misbehaved. The chorus of the quiet came back on every screen. No face this time, just a field of tiny lights. Stand down, the chorus said. Last ask. In orbit above Crown, the Shiv pawned the rules of cause and effect like a desperate gambler. The array caught it, not crushed, cradled, and very gently, like correcting a child's hand before it touched a hot stove, set it down somewhere it could break nothing but pride. Your admirals will call that humiliation, Ochoa said quietly. We call it mercy. Luma looked at the convoy, at the children who would sleep tonight because strangers held a wall, at the hegemony cruisers studying the braid like a mirror. And if they don't learn? Harvest, Ochoa said. It wasn't a threat and it wasn't soft. A new contact lit the scope, a hegemony destroyer with its guns cold and its running lights bright. It hailed on civilian bands. We have wounded, the captain said, voice raw, and questions. The test was no longer theoretical. The meeting took place in Crown's orbital commons, a market ring that normally sold onion bulbs and engine grease. Now it held a microphone, 3 flags, and a fear that had become intention. On one side, Luma in a uniform that would probably be taken from her when the paperwork caught up. On another, Captain Threx of the hegemony destroyer, jaw set like someone learning not to clench. Between them, Dr. Mira Ochoa with a mug and a stack of terms written in a script older than both their polities. We don't demand surrender, Ochoa said. We don't do thrones, we do responsibility. Terms are simple. Decommission any weapon that tries to edit reality. Submit doomsday research to a joint board with vetoes weighted toward whoever has the most civilians within blast radius. Adopt refugee corridors as sacred ground. We'll show you how to build arrays of your own under promise. You'll help us watch the dark. Who decides when a war is just? Threx asked. It wasn't a trap, it was a plea. No one alone, Ochoa said. Just war theory is like a safety harness. You check each other's buckles. Proportionality. Last resort, right intention. We'll put philosophers on the board next to admirals and family doctors. You'll hate the meetings. That's how you know they are working. Luma glanced at the hegemony banners, at the compacted pride in their folds. Your supreme will call you traitor. Threx's smile was small and surprised. Commander, I serve people, not a logo. A chime, votes rolling in across both polities. Crown put up its hand first, of course. Then 3 compact worlds that had seen too many memorials. Then, shockingly, a hegemony grain moon whose farmers had no patience left for flags that liked funerals. The numbers crawled toward a threshold Ochoa refused to name aloud. The array's chorus spoke softly into the spaces between heartbeats. We will protect those who choose wisdom. We will preserve those who insist on playing with matches near curtains. No one disappears, but some will move. On cue, the lattice at the edge of maps flared, not bright exactly, but definite. Somewhere an ancient engine spun up with the measured calm of a hospital generator. Ochoa winced and touched her ribs as if remembering an old break. We hate this part, she murmured. We always have. Luma understood then the cost behind the competence. The array could cradle beams and hold back knives that slashed at cause and effect, but it needed people to stand in public and say ***, no *** to the easy victory. The array couldn't vote. Her console buzzed, a private line from someone in a very tall building. Commander Kesh, said a voice that owned 7 kinds of carpet, you are relieved. Stand down and return the convoy to military custody. Luma looked out at the braid, at the loaders still forming a wall because it felt good to be part of something sane. She muted the call. With respect, she told no one and everyone, I have better bosses tonight. The destroyer captain extended a hand. Luma took it. The ring cheered like weather breaking. Ochoa exhaled a laugh that sounded like grief halfway to laughter. First patch applied. The celebration didn't last. 2 hegemony hardliners streaked in from the dark, running hot, firing dumb kinetics like teenagers, convinced the party wouldn't end without fireworks. The array's ribbons took most of it, but one slug pinwheeled toward the market ring where 3 flags tried to be reasonable in vacuum. Ochoa moved without thinking, skiff flaring, fold mirror snapping into place like a shield blooming from a legend. The slug hit the mirror and became a slow rain of light that drifted over the ring like blessing. The blowback flayed the skiff's skin. Ochoa's board went black. For a heartbeat, Luma saw her through a glass of static, eyes closed, lips counting a prayer the array might have taught her or she might have taught the array. Then the skiff's backup wove itself from nothing, ugly and functional as a splint. Ochoa blinked and sat up. We're fine, she lied, voice hoarse. Next time someone else does the hero bit. Rotating duties is healthy for coalitions. Threx laughed without quite crying. We can do that. The votes ticked past the threshold. The chorus announced it like weather. Terms accepted by a quorum sufficient to move history. The harvest will be lighter than we feared. Downslope from the joy, ships appeared like careful hands. They didn't take anybody's agency. They did offer tickets, worlds prepared for people who couldn't stop reaching for matches. The diehards didn't cheer. Some spat. Some wept. But they went under promise, with their children, with their books, with a future that would require fewer funerals. Crown's markets reopened. The braid unbraided and became a parade of tired ships that knew what they'd done and didn't need a speech. Waru finally slept in a chair with a sandwich on his chest like a small moon. Luma took off her insignia and put it in her pocket because titles couldn't carry what she'd chosen to carry. On the ring, Dr. Mira Ochoa poured coffee for whoever wandered near. Admirals, farmers, kids with kites. She looked smaller now that the crisis had stopped demanding she be tall. Luma joined her at the rail and watched the lattice glow at the edge of maps. You'll make us partners? Luma asked. Ochoa nodded. With training wheels at first, we'll argue, we'll vote, we'll make terrible committees and necessary friends. We'll teach you to build arrays that listen more than they shout. And you? Luma asked. What do you get? Ochoa stared into the dark as if listening for someone else's footsteps in a lonely hall. company, she said, and the right to be human and not capital H humanity every day. A wry half-smile. Also better coffee. Your beans are tragic. Luma laughed, and the sound felt like a ship shedding ballast. Below them, Crown turned slowly, a moon that would tell a different story to its children. That the day the light stopped moving, grown-ups showed up, not to take their toys, but to teach them how to build better ones without burning down the house. The quiet Armada dimmed their ribbons and stayed anyway, not guardians behind a curtain now, but neighbors with toolboxes. The test wasn't over. Tests never are. But the answers were no longer multiple choice. They were essays, graded by time and dinner tables and how many kids grew up with more porch lights than sirens. The lattice at the edge of maps pulsed once, like a heartbeat that had been lonely too long. And for the first night in a while, the galaxy slept. Crown slept for 12 hours, the kind of sleep only earned after history. When the markets woke, the ring hosted something stranger than a victory parade. A class. Dr. Mira Ochoa stood before a scaffolded sphere of pale machinery, a promised seed the size of a shuttle, while 24 engineers from Compact and Hegemony took notes like apprentices around a hearth. "Arrays listen first," she said, tapping the sphere. "Then they heal. They only interpose when everyone else has failed to behave." She flicked a switch. The seed unfurled petals of crystal and wire. "You will not duplicate our cores yet. Training wheels. We lend you conscience long enough to grow your own." Captain Threx watched with his officers, still in Hegemony gray, weapons peace-locked. He caught Luma Kesh's eye and offered a nod that felt like a rehearsal for something more difficult than truce. Luma's console pinged. A message from Meridian Command, dry as dust, relieved for cause. "Surrender vessel." She muted the notice, then forwarded a copy to the public ledger. No speech, just transparency. That, too, was a kind of test. Waru, bleary but radiant, rolled a cart of tea between benches. "Hydrate your ethics," he told a Hegemony tech who had forgotten to blink for an hour. The man laughed, and the sound landed like a new tile in a mosaic. Ochoa's lessons slid from physics to philosophy and back. She spoke of proportionality as a tune you learn by ear, of non-combatant immunity like a fence you paint together so no one can claim not to see it, of just war as a last, reluctant tool in a box mostly filled with bridges. "After the Second World War on old Earth," she said, "we poured food and money into former enemies. They called it the Marshall Plan. It wasn't charity. It was strategy with conscience." She looked at Threx, then Luma. "Grown-ups make more grown-ups." A courier drone jittered into the hall, too fast, too eager. Ochoa snagged it one-handed, pried open its cowling, and swore softly. Inside, a thumb-sized logic bomb curled like a seed that hated gardens. She held it up. "Someone in this room wants to skip class." The crowd froze. The bomb's timer flicked from seconds to breaths. Ochoa didn't panic. She flicked her mug against the device, letting coffee seep into a weave of capillaries, staining a filament that liked purity more than survival. "SHH," she told the bomb, voiced the tone used for skittish animals and waking memories. The timer hiccuped, then stalled like a bad singer losing the key. Threx barked orders. His officers locked the exits with courtesy instead of guns. Luma stepped onto a bench. "If you brought more toys, put them on the floor, step back, and claim your conscience while it still answers to your name." A wrench clanged. A Compact engineer, her badge from the Sable office half hidden, set down a second device with shaking hands. Ochoa killed both bombs with a gesture that looked suspiciously like a blessing. "There will be no purges," she said, "only consequences. Saboteurs will be moved to preserves where their love of breaking will harm fewer throats. They will bring their books." Someone shouted from the back, bitter and young, "You're colonizing us with smiles." Ochoa didn't flinch. "If you've studied colonization, you know the symptoms: extraction without consent, culture erased, agency denied. We are doing none of those. We're adding vetoes, preserving languages, and asking you to be terrifyingly responsible." She leaned in, voice lower. "Also, you can say no. We'll protect your right to refuse and the galaxy's right not to be burned by your tantrum." The chorus of the quiet arrived in every ear, softer than before, the way a choir lowers its volume so the children will lean in. Hardliners are massing near the Crown Corridor, 2 ships with Sunhammer cores. They intend to detonate as demonstration. Sunhammer, old, crude, joyous in its disregard for thermodynamics. Detonation would gut Crown's atmosphere and paint the corridor with a century of funerals. Threx went pale. Those are ours. It matters and it doesn't, Luma said. Call them off. We'll intercept either way. He snapped to it, voice cracking, new channels open like ice in spring. The reply from the hardliners came back flat, orders from Supreme. Hold line, make price. Interposition, Ochoa said, already moving. The promised seed squealed as she overrode its safeties. We'll meet them in the corridor with ribbons wide and palms up. That won't be enough, Waru murmured, eyes on the projected blast radii. Not if they detonate to spite you. We'll give them a better story to star in, Ochoa said. Berlin had an airlift when blockades tried to starve a city. We'll run a light lift, supplies, medicine, music through the corridor in full sight. Let them explain to their grandchildren why they fired through food. They will, Threx said, too honest to lie. Then we force a different loyalty to wake up first, Luma said, already spinning logistics like nets. Crowdsource pilots, publish routes. Any ship willing to help mark your hull with a lamp will keep the lanes honest. Crown's commons erupted into organized chaos, paint slapping onto hulls, manifests filling with diapers and antibiotics and hard candy, old freighters learning new choreography. The promised seed pulsed, petals brightening from pearl to sunrise. Ochoa grabbed Luma's shoulder, brief and human. History watches. Let it, Luma said, and meant it. They burned for the corridor, a fleet of kindness sailing into a crosshairs. The sunhammers lit, wolfish and eager. The array's ribbons billowed like prayer flags. Lightlift lanes established. Ops reported, voice steady by force of will. First transports entering kill zone. Hold, Ochoa whispered, to the ribbons, to the pilots, to the part of the galaxy that did not yet believe in itself. The sunhammer's charge climbed. The promised seed screamed. And somewhere beyond instruments, beyond doctrine, something very old chose where to stand. The first sunhammer didn't explode. It sulked. Ribbons caught its tantrum and spread it over a sheet of sympathy thick as law. The second sunhammer learned and tried to spit sideways through a school bus of med kits and a piano lashed to a tug. Ochoa made the mirror bloom. The sideways became inward, the tantrum folded into a pocket you could sew shut. The pocket stitched, but it took something with it. Her skiff's primary conscience, centuries of learned balances, went suddenly quiet. She swayed. Luma stepped in, shoulder under her weight. Don't you dare fall. I'm fine, Ochoa lied, gray at the edges. Backup will relearn, like riding a bike after losing your training wheels and one elbow. The light lift flowed. Kids waved from portholes at ships that used to be enemies and were now ambulance cousins. The hardliners on the far side watched, doctrine dueling with the sight of a hegemony destroyer offloading sacks of grain to a compact barge with a hand-lettered banner. ***, Crown bakes ***. This is where logistics becomes ethics, Luma thought. Civil rights organizers back on ancient Earth had run carpools for a year so children could ride without shame. The math of that kindness broke a city's bad habit. We mirror that math, she said into the net. No gaps, no heroes alone. Hand each other the load until your wrists remember we were built for this. A ripple, ugly, clever, traveled the lane, not a weapon. A rumor, ***, quiet Armada seizes children for relocation. ***, moved like oil on water, slick and fast. Memetic Shiv, Waru said, rolling a curse around his amphibian tongue. You can't freeze a lie. No, Ochoa agreed, but you can out-sing it. She opened every channel and began a call and response that wasn't quite a song and wasn't quite a briefing. Who decides a move? She called. We do, voices answered, parents, captains, teenagers with chipped nail polish. What do we bring if we go? Everyone, everything, even the bad poems. What do we lose? Nothing, we didn't vote to leave. The rumor hit the wall of answers and slid off like rain. Someone to someone's on the hardliner ships cut power and drifted toward the light lift with running lights bright. Mutiny by lamp. The Supreme finally blinked. His broadcast arrived smelling of old carpets and fear. By the sun's will, all dissent is treason, fire. The mutineers went dark. A third sunhammer spooled, ugly with certainty. The chorus of the quiet threaded the air with a sigh. Harvest protocol ready. No, Luma said, surprising herself, surprising the array. She opened a live ballot, ugly and simple, and threw it on every screen. Asterisk, asterisk, do we accept partnership under promise? Yes, slash, not yet, asterisk, asterisk. Names poured in like caught breath. Crown. The Grain Moon. A scrapyard habitat that had been built from 3 broken stations and a rumor. Even a Hegemony Academy ship crewed by cadets who'd learned to march better than to ask questions. The bar ticked toward something you could call consent without wincing. On the far side, the hardliners flinched. Shooting at a crowd that had said yes to adulthood requires a kind of villainy even villains prefer to outsource to time. The third sunhammer fired, too late, at an angle half-hearted. The promise seed caught most of it. The remainder streaked toward Crown's lower atmosphere like a fist hoping to land somewhere it would be believed. Threx swore in a language that had grown in salt and storms. My ship, he said. Our fault, we'll take it. He peeled his destroyer out of the braid, flipped end over, and burned hard nose toward the falling spark. We can't intercept in time, Luma warned. Then we'll sit under it, Threx said. Umbrella mode. Ochoa's eyes went wide. You'll cook. Less than a moon, Threx said. More than I want. His crew didn't argue. They strapped in and ran a checklist like a prayer. The destroyer slid beneath the falling shard and flared every plate it owned, opening its belly like a parent trying to be a roof during bad weather. The shard hit. Light bellowed. Shields died. Hull paint became a story about endurance. When the glare faded, the destroyer was ugly and alive, and Crown still had oceans. The ring cheered with a sound that would become a holiday if anyone kept the calendars straight. The Supreme doubled down. Take their names, he told an aide on an open channel. We'll make examples. Sir, the aide said, voice careful. The examples have names of their own. Mutiny started small as it must. A gun held the wrong way round, a door opened with the wrong hand. Then it spread like a useful rumor, the kind that saves lives because believing it feels better than fear. Half the Hegemony task force went neutral, a quarter declared for promise. The remainder turned their guns on those their logos told them to hate. The array brightened. The harvest will be selective, the chorus said. Fewer moves, more neighbors. Luma looked at Ochoa. The human was pale, hands steady by oath rather than physics. What's the cost? Luma asked. Memory. Ochoa said. The seed burned its primary conscience. We can rebuild. Some of what I know how to know will come back like a word on the tip of the tongue for a month that never quite arrives. Luma didn't know how to answer that without sounding like a prayer. She settled for, we'll write you post-it notes. Ochoa laughed, then winced. Okay, new test. Supreme's going to run. He'll use civilians as a blanket. He'll dare us to burn the house to smoke him out. And we won't. Luma said, no, Ochoa agreed. But we're going into the house anyway. They named it the bridge because that's what they needed, and because the word had practice carrying people across bad water. The plan was indecently simple. Park ships nose to tail between the Supreme's flagship and the jump gate, broadcast every civilian manifest in the sector, and invite crews on the wrong side of history to walk across with their hands showing and their chins up. It's Berlin again, Ochoa said, tapping a star chart that had become a neighborhood. Air corridors back then, light corridors now. Blockade logic hates dignity, so we flood the field with it. Legal will ask about orders, Threx said. My people respect the gold braid even when it strangles. Nuremberg taught us something, Ochoa replied, gentle and firm. Illegal orders exist. The duty to refuse them is part of the uniform. Luma threaded the convoy into a curve that wrote asterisk asterisk no asterisk asterisk in navigational lights so bright a cadet could read it on a bad day. Waru worked triage on the fly, pinning protocols to bulkheads with tape and tea. The promised seed hovered above the lane like a lantern trying not to think of moths. They broadcast names of children who'd learned new lullabies on Crown, of farmers who'd painted grain moons with patient circles, of cadets who wanted to graduate into something that didn't require fresh graves to prove it had teeth. The screens filled with faces and small facts. **Amma Grist, 9, wants a dog and 2 mothers to stop worrying. Farit Yuna, 37, welds straight lines and sings bent ones. The flagship approached, decorum at ramming speed. The Supreme's voice flooded the lane, buttery with menace. "Step aside," he purred. "Let adults settle adult matters." "Sir," said a young officer bravely over an unmuted intercom, "they are adults." A tremor ran through the formation like a gasp. Luma leaned forward, not breathing. This was where movements grew or broke. The flagship fired grapnels, legal in a way that hid cruelty behind paperwork. The hooks latched onto 2 civilian tugs, older than 100 arguments, and began to reel them in to use as cover. "Mirror," Luma asked. "Not on those lines," Ochoa said. "Too human, we can't make physics do the wrong moral here without paying a bill we don't intend to owe." "Then we talk," Luma said and opened a wideband. "Bridge is hot, names walking. You pull those tugs, you'll be pulling their kids' birthdays onto your hull." Someone on the flagship cut the winches. Not an order, a hand. The Supreme had had enough of hands. He authorized the **choir**, a mimetic package meant to harmonize fear into obedience. Choirs can be beautiful. This one arrived like mildew. It worked for a minute. Voices around the lane slid into unison that wasn't agreement so much as surrender. The bridge wobbled. Ochoa didn't counter-program with louder songs. She did something ruder. She opened a feed of mundane comms, the kind you don't hear when war shouts. Grocery lists, homework help, an argument about whose turn it was to scrub the algae baffles, a joke about how the new promise inspection forms looked like someone had lost a fight with a committee and coffee. She amplified ordinary until it felt amplified enough to be extraordinary. The mildew dried. The choir lost its pitch to the sound of 1,000 households refusing to be conquered by any voice not invited to dinner. The Supreme tried a final measure. Sunhammer 0 **, a hand-modified core wired to his ship's heart that would fuse 2 bad ideas into one last lesson. The array could not freeze what sat inside a living hull without treating everyone aboard as expendable. The chorus whispered. "Do we prune?" "Not yet," Ochoa said. "Not if we're asking to be partners." Threx took a breath that sounded like a man picking up a heavy box. "We breach," he said. "Boarding action, but with surgeons." "You'll never make it," Luma said. "He'll vent the corridors just to be right." "Then we go in by another door," Ochoa said, eyes on the promise seed like a widow learning a new prayer. "We stitch a corridor that exists and doesn't until it's finished. We call it a mercy walk. We built it for hospitals whose walls were fire." The mercy walk took shape between Halcyon Threx's destroyer and the flagship's skin, a hallway of light and borrowed trust. Luma pulled on a helmet, locked her mag boots, and stepped into a passage that felt like walking through a strong idea. Threx fell in beside her, a wall of man in a suit scuffed by history. Ochoa brought up the rear, one hand on the corridor's spine, lips moving like a teacher counting heads. They met resistance, sprinkled and mean, Marines who hadn't decided yet, officers who had and were wrong. The mercy walk did what it could. It nudged aim lines off hearts and onto bulkheads. It made boots slip at the right second. It asked hands to remember they were built to lift. They reached Sunhammer Zero's cradle. It hissed like pride. "Fail safe?" Luma asked. "Sir," Threx said into his own throat mic, "I'm invoking the clause we were told was ceremonial. Illegal order, we're done." 2 decks above them, something broke, morale or myth. Mutiny ran through the flagship like a new road. The Supreme tried to run it back with words he'd sharpened for decades. They cut no one. A junior officer, hands like anyone's, locked him in a chair that had never tasted such humble duty. The coil's meters ticked toward a line you mark in red because you want the pen to feel like it did something. "We can vent the core into the promised seed," HFY said, voice calm on a cliff. "It'll save the ship and crown. The seed will forget most of what it knows how to be." "You too," Luma said. HFY shrugged with terrible gentleness. "I know people who'll teach me again. You'll be one of them." The meters kissed the red. Luma put her hand over the lever because someone had to be the hand. "On my count," she said, and counted. The lever went down like a verdict passed by someone who hates courtrooms. The coil howled. The promised seed opened its chest and took in a sun that had been rushed through childhood. Light tried to be everywhere. The seed said, "No, thank you," with a politeness that shook metal. The Mercy Walk shivered, then steadied. The flagship's bones groaned and then decided not to break today. When the glow folded into a manageable grief, the seed hung motionless, petals scorched to the color of old ivory. HFY leaned against the bulkhead, breath measured into squares. "Primary is gone," she said, answering a question nobody wanted to ask. "Secondary's a bright kid. We'll get there." In the command gallery, a young officer with a uniform too new for the work she had done read formal charges to the Supreme: treason against persons, attempted mass harm, ordering illegal acts, nothing ornate. Law doesn't need poetry to be real. The chorus of the quiet spoke to all of them, not like a judge, not like a parent, but like a neighbor who had stood in a lot of dark doorways. "The harvest proceeds where it must. The bridge holds where it can. Those who chose matches will be moved with their children, their recipes, and their arguments. Their skies will be gentler for a time. Those who chose company will learn new watch-keeping. The moves were not triumph. They were logistics done with a hand on the heart. Teachers walked with their classes, counting noses. Bakers taped recipes into crates. A hegemony poet wrote a line on a bulkhead, *, we were not exiled, we were transplanted. The soil here is patient, *, and promised to hate it tomorrow on principle. Waru opened a clinic in an empty cargo bay and called it * enough for today *. Captain Threx tendered his resignation to a flag that had become a mirror and was told to keep his ship with a new mandate stamped over the old. *, protect what feeds *. Luma Kesh found her insignia in her pocket and gave it to a child whose family had walked the bridge. The kid wore it for an hour and then used it to weigh down a kite string. Priorities were improving. Committees formed, groaned, and kept meeting. The Joint Promise Board filled with admirals, philosophers, stevedores, farmers, a nurse who hated titles, and a teenager who understood data hygiene better than any old. They wrote veto procedures so tangled no one could run away with the trigger. They argued about thresholds until the arguments themselves became a kind of safety harness. HFY sat on the rim of a maintenance hatch with a notebook full of boxes she checked to prove to herself she still knew how to know. ***, fold mirror math. ***, half check. ***, names of Crown's Baker Streets. ***, all ***, recipe for Waru's tea. ***, mostly cinnamon. Luma joined her and placed a stack of postcards in her lap, each with a fact or a joke. "Memory rehab," Luma said. "Homework is graded on kindness." "You're ridiculous," HFY said, smiling like someone surprised to find a muscle working. "Coalitions thrive on ridiculous," Luma said. "Straight lines break, jokes bend." The promise lattice at the edge of the map pulsed, then steadied at a brightness that made astronomers happy and poets harder to bear. Training seeds shipped out under escort to places that had chosen yes. The seeds arrived with long manuals and longer anecdotes. Quiet Armada crews taught the first cohort of promise wardens how to listen to a sky without telling it who to be. Crown declared a holiday called *** Bridge Night ***. Kids tied lamps to kites and ran along the ring until the lamps looked like a river of patience. Threx stood beside the grain moon farmers and learned how to read the wind without instruments. Waru danced with a person who had been his patient and wasn't anymore. Luma fell asleep in a chair and woke with a blanket she didn't own and a pencil drawing tucked into her sleeve. Her ship, the skiff, a ladder of light between them. Not everyone clapped. A compact minister announced that partnership was theft with please and thank you. His district recalled him with more please and more thank you. A hegemony cell attempted to rebuild a sunhammer from spare parts and pride. The board sent them manuals on crop rotation, and a delegation of grandmothers who had opinions about kitchens and weapons and were prepared to be obeyed on both. In a quiet hour when the ring hummed like a cat, the chorus of the quiet spoke into private channels. "We have been lonely a long time," it said. "We would like to be your neighbors more than your legends." Luma stepped onto the commons and set a small brazier on a crate. She lit it with a match because fire used right is still good. People came, hegemony gray, compact blue mechanics with oil under their nails, kids with questions no curriculum can satisfy. HFY arrived late, slow, and sat cross-legged with her mug. They didn't plan speeches. They planned a rule, asterisk, if the lattice pulses, we answer. If the market needs onions, we answer. If the coffee runs out, we answer faster, asterisk. In virtue ethics, HFY said softly over the steam and the wood smoke, you don't become just by passing a test. You become just by practicing justice until your hands remember it without your head having to yell. And if we forget, Threx asked. We'll write you postcards, Luma said, and the ring laughed. At the edge of the map, the lattice brightened, not as warning, but as welcome. Somewhere a preserved world looked up and saw a courier from Crown bringing a crate of kites and a manual for arguing well. Somewhere else, a child born under a different flag learned the word asterisk neighbor asterisk and found it tasted like cinnamon and iron and the kind of tired you get from building. The quiet Armada didn't leave. It bought a stall in the market and started fixing broken kettles for free. It sent seeds to new partners and sent invitations to former students to come teach. It filed fewer emergency protocols and more recipes. The gardeners had not put away their pruning shears. Some seasons still cut. But the garden had new hands, and the old hands shook less. As the ring lights winked out one by one, as Crown settled into a night that felt like an exhale, Luma Kesh looked at the sky and didn't see an edge anymore. She saw a fence waiting to be painted together, names waiting to be learned, and a beam of light that, when asked, remembered how to move.